Two, one. All right. Well, welcome, Chris, to Building on Blockchain Part 6. It is a pleasure to have you.
What's going on, man?
Just another hot day here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, it's hot in Jersey, too.
Yeah, it seems to be just about everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's like 95 today.
But
we're cool. We're chilling inside. No big deal.
That's good. It's kind of getting tricky for the miners out there with the extra adding up. So, Chris, catch us up on your background here real quick. I want to talk about what you did before blockchain made its way into your life and the paradigm shift that you had getting accustomed to this growing industry and this culture that's emerging, and how you found your niche and your corner and what you're doing with it.
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of a long story, so take a deep breath. I went to school for mechanical engineering, graduated in 2008. And got a job immediately working for the United States Navy. I actually make containers for missiles. I do a lot of shock and vibration protection and environmental protection of like Tomahawk missiles and all those things you see the Navy shooting. I was never super passionate about it, but it was a job. But since I was young, I always loved finance. And over time, just in my career, I started to take more and more of an interest in saving my own money and investing. So I actually started off with the Motley Fool, Fool.com, and got really into finance. So after a year or two of just kind of like studying on my own, I was lucky enough that my uncle, who married into the family, owns a broker dealer, and he sponsored me to take the Series 7 and 66 to become a registered stockbroker and investment advisor.
All
so
right.
I took up on that. Yeah, I got those licenses, learned a lot about cash flow analysis and evaluating companies. At this time, I had a little bit of exposure to Bitcoin, just kind of thought it was a cool thing that people were actually buying stuff with this currency that wasn't backed by any country, but I wasn't really treating it as an investment. That kind of changed in like 2016. And actually before that, I noticed the price of Bitcoin just skyrocketing one week in like 2013. And it was the same time that the Bank of Cyprus was collapsing. Cyprus is a country in Europe where a lot of Russians kind of like hide their money. It's like an offshore bank haven, kind of like the, some Caribbean islands for the U.S.
Offshore.
So that was really,
haven.
Yeah, that was really the first time that I made a connection in my head. Hey, this Bitcoin thing might be real. Maybe it's a hedge to the U.S. dollar. Maybe it's an offshore bank alternative, something. At that time, it really wasn't anything yet, but the price, did correlate. But over time, I just got obsessed with Bitcoin. I just kept learning more and more. I started to care about finance less, and just really went down the proverbial Bitcoin rabbit hole. And that's when I started my blog, Bitconsult.co, and the company Bitconsult LLC.
Right.
And I really just started writing a blog just to see if I knew what I was talking about. And also because my friends kept asking me questions about Bitcoin, it was easier to just like link them to the blog rather than start from scratch every time. And I just started learning about Austrian economics in general, networking, cryptography, so many other things. It's just endless. And I'm still very deep in that rabbit hole. And it's awesome because it also led me to Twitter and to some incredible people, including you. And it's just added this like new energy to my life where there's just so many brilliant people around who are doing awesome things, and I'm just happy to be a part of it and to push it forward.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Actually, that's one of the things I have written down here that I really wanted to talk to you about was the emerging culture of crypto and blockchain, and a lot of people have kind of noticed some trends that happen that a lot of users happen to have similar. There's a lot of intelligence quests and deep academic talks, and there's a lot of intercorrelation as well, and that's what excites me, is because you see economics, but you also see focus on user experience and the user themselves and what they're like and what they consider and the reward for that user participating in certain networks. But what we're seeing is just a conglomeration of really, really smart people that are debating back and forth. I think it's fascinating to watch from the sidelines because there's some pretty big brains going head to head over a lot of really important ideas.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and the coolest thing is that we are able to watch it because so many of these big brains are on Twitter and are publicly
Right.
sharing their thoughts or publicly sharing their vision of what Bitcoin could be and their fork, and they're all fighting it out in
Right.
public. So while this has happened, with companies and with personalities in the past, I don't think it's ever been as visible as it is now. And I totally agree that Bitcoin just attracts not only brilliant people, but a very specific kind of person. And the reason for that is to start to understand Bitcoin, you really have to question what money is. And
Right.
that's not a question many people ask. And once you start to ask that question, I think it's inevitable that you start asking, what value is, what information is, what reality is, if you want to get really trippy. So yeah, it just attracts a certain type of person. And luckily, a lot of people are really smart, but luckily, even more than that, a lot of people are really just open and honest and just willing to help each other.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely awesome. And to be able to just watch from the sidelines while it's happening now is incredible. I think it's something that a lot of people will look back on in the future to try and figure out how these foundational blocks got set in the first 10 years, the first 20 years of blockchain and digital assets and peer-to-peer networking hitting the World Wide Web. So it's interesting to think that we might be looking back on what's happening right now, and we have the opportunity to watch, and even on Twitter, like you said, even participate. We can comment, we can ask questions, we can bring up really provocative ideas.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, we're just in 2019 right now. Bitcoin's been out for like 10 years. And
Right.
even today, I was answering some questions from Stanislav Desos on Twitter. Really cool guy. He does a lot of trading. And I was kind of going through my background and some of the questions that he was asking, and I realized, whoa, like, even though I felt I got involved late, I think I bought my first Bitcoin in like 2012. I remember sending like the wire to Bitstamp and just thinking like, what am I even doing? Like, what am I buying? I have no idea. And that was like 7 years ago, and so much has changed since then. And I think it's important to realize that like we're no longer on the sidelines. We're part of it now, and we have an influence and, at least just helping other people understand like what to learn and what's important.
Right.
Don't necessarily have to be the world-class cryptographers, and to some extent, sometimes those guys are a little misguided in other parts of life. So we're all in it now, baby.
Well, speaking of all the changes that have happened, looking at the past decade, my entrance to blockchain and crypto was 2016, early 2017. It took me a lot of time to learn, and there's a lot of times where I felt like I knew nothing. Actually, pretty much my entire journey, I still feel like I knew nothing, just because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And that's a pretty big gap. Well, including your time and the changes that you've seen since, what are some of the most positive developments? Because right now, what's developing and what's being created on these blockchains is a lot different than what was going on 5-6 years ago. So what are some of your favorite projects or groups that are collaborating, building in one way or another? What's got your eye right now?
So I first started to take a real interest in Bitcoin, as I said, as like a gold alternative, an offshore bank alternative, but that's not that exciting. Sure, it might make you some money. Maybe there will be an ETF, which would just make absolutely no sense because then you're not even holding your private keys. But
Right.
What really got me excited initially is Andreas Antonopoulos talking about the internet of money. And I like to call it the internet of value now. And I kept hearing about all these things that were going to be built on Bitcoin. We're going to be built on Bitcoin, or they're
Right.
sort of being built on Ethereum, but Ethereum doesn't work when there's an ICO going on, or when CryptoKitties doesn't work because of network inflation, and no one can even run a full node anymore. So I got reinvigorated like a couple of months ago when I really started to get involved in the BSV community, and seeing apps like Twitch and Money Button, I'm like, holy crap, like this innovation that I kept hearing about for the last 5 years, like it's finally happening. And maybe it's not on the chain with the most hash power right now. Maybe it's, on a chain that was started by Craig Wright and has some things associated with it that not a lot of people love. But, there's people building on there. And I think that this is a chance to, get motivated people to start building again and to start using it again, because I got to be honest, like I don't think Bitcoin's even built for payments. I think Lightning will probably have its place in facilitating certain types of transactions, but consumers aren't incentivized to use Bitcoin as a payment mechanism. That being said, I love Bitcoin and I love cryptocurrency, and I try to use it as much as possible. And I find myself using it way more than anybody else, even these like personalities in the space. Like, you find out that they don't really transact that much, or that they don't even hold their own private keys. And
Yeah.
I'm sick of that. Like, I'm sick of the philosophical angle and the solution is coming in 18 months angle, and I'm really excited for what's being built right now.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned Twitch and Money Button. I've been seeing quite a bit of talk on Twitter about those two projects, especially going hand in hand. How would you describe Twitch, and how would you compare it to Twitter, and what's going on there?
Yeah, Twitch is super cool. It's like a very simple Twitter right now. You pretty much pay 2 cents to post, and if somebody likes your post or comments on your post, you get a little bit of money back. So it's it's really like a proof of concept more than anything, I think, right now. And it's kind of like incentivizing attention, incentivizing quality posts, although that may not necessarily be true. But right now it is, with a very dedicated group of people who are using it right now.
Right.
But it's really slick. It's linked into the Money Button. So if you're on Google Chrome or something and you're logged into your Money Button, posting something on Twitch is super easy. You just slide the button to the right, pay your 2 cents or whatever. And then not only can you make money off it, but it's also linked to the BSV blockchain and stored forever.
Oh, I got you. Wow.
Yeah, so like Twitch is starting to take up a big percentage of the BSV transactions. So it's no longer just, Weather SV. These are things that you've heard about that have been coming down the pipe for a while. And even something as simple as just knowing you can store data, like on the Bitcoin blockchain, you could hash something and do some sort of like proof of existence. I still, as an okay coder, like I'm not really a coder, but I'm pretty tech savvy. I still didn't know where to start if I wanted to just type something up, hash it, and store it in a Bitcoin transaction. And now with Twitch and everything, those tools are already, everything's taken care of for you.
Right.
I think looking big picture, of course, Twitch is a company right now, and it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how it evolves and if it becomes this like permissionless, decentralized social network where nobody feels like, well, number one, where nobody's in charge to be able to censor accounts, suspend accounts. And I think that's definitely where tech is going in the future. And it'll be interesting to see how it evolves.
I think so too. It's very exciting. Even just talking about it now, I can't stop smiling. It's so much fun to watch everything happen live. I mean, what kind of a moment are we living in here? I'm so grateful to be here and to be able to watch this and even have conversations with you and with people like you. It's so exciting to me.
Yeah, it feels special. Like everyone kind of wishes they were involved in the early like crypto anarchist message board phase of like Bitcoin and everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of people now some people think they're early right now in 2019, and to some extent they are, but this feeling that I have using some of these tools that are being built now in BSV, it feels like I'm actually part of a very motivated small community that, is trying to do something. And everyone, both on BTC and BSV that I interact with, are just willing to help each other, willing to give their time, and it's really incredible. And I think the Bitcoin and crypto Twitter in general kind of get a bad rap of just like shit posting and like, not supporting people and just whatever. But
right.
I think if you find the right group, Twitter really becomes a place for mentoring and for building.
Yeah, that's what I've started finding in the last couple of years. It's really interesting. It's kind of turned my shoulder in a funny way because I didn't really know a place existed like that in the realms of Twitter.
Yeah, it's nuts.
But well, mentioning how exciting it is in the moment we're in now, what do you think the future is going to look like, considering how much change you've seen in the past few years? If you had to take some sort of guess 3-4 years down the line, what do you think some of these projects will look like that are going on today, and what do you think? How do you think the culture will react with that and change?
Well, the vocabulary is changing, not just in crypto Twitter, but in like the world in general. And I was blown away this week by the congressional hearings on Libra, that there's actually a couple like Bitcoin bulls in Congress right now. And some of them just kind of like memorize the buzzwords of like decentralization and holding private keys and stuff like that. But there's a couple people who actually realize, like, all right, Libra may facilitate payments and may make some things easier, but it's not the heart of cryptocurrency, and it's not what it is. So I definitely believe in time dilation, and that, like, certain groups of people learn stuff ahead of other groups, but it's going to come. And I've just seen the language in both Congress and even on like CNBC just change a lot in the last couple of months. And I think people are starting to get it. I think regardless of whether Bitcoin gets an ETF or whatever, I think more and more people, especially younger people, will start to save a little bit more of their money in Bitcoin. And with things like Robinhood app and Square Cash, it's just become like super easy now. You no longer have to like convince someone to start a Coinbase account or to do it the right way and go through local Bitcoins and whatever else. So like that's definitely exciting from like a monetary standpoint. And I think like solutions like Lightning will start to be integrated behind the scenes, but I really don't see payments taking off until cryptocurrency finds a way to incentivize users to spend cryptocurrency. I mean, people get made fun of for saying, oh, just use your credit card. And of course, that makes sense. If Bitcoin didn't have merchant adoption early on, it would have died. Someone needed to accept it and show that it has value before it could become this gold alternative thing. I think we're past that stage where it no longer has to prove itself from, a payments standpoint. It can go that gold and that offshore bank direction. But I really just don't see the payments taking off. And I don't really think BCH has a chance or has a good roadmap or anything anymore. And I'm certainly most excited for the Internet of Value type things and what's going on in BSV and just storing more things on chain. I mean, when you just think about it from a very far back concept, just think that for a few cents, you can get a bunch of people who are running full nodes around the world to store your data. And that's worth something, whether it become this immutable Twitter thing or whether it just becomes money button payments or proof of existence, hashing stuff and putting it on chain, like that has value. So I think BTC will continue to be dominant over the next few years. And a few years ago, I made a price prediction of like 65K in 2022, June 2022. And I'm still kind of standing by that. I think that's correct. And I think BSV will probably get to around 0.15 Bitcoin in the next like year or two. I think it will start to eat up some ground, but the whole Internet of Value thing is a whole nother layer of time dilation from the gold thing. So I think there's a lot of BSV bulls, and I think BSV may outperform Bitcoin in the near future, but there's not going to be a flippening, I don't think, in the next few years.
I don't think so either. The talk of flippening has definitely had its moments. But you mentioned BCH, Bitcoin Cash, and we're talking a lot about BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi's vision, and obviously the main Bitcoin that people are associated with. Also, a couple of, like how you were mentioning how quickly the jargon changes. A couple of new terms I've seen were Bitcoin being spelled with a capital C and being defined a bit differently. How do you associate the difference between Bitcoin with a capital B versus Bitcoin with a capital C? And how do you...
There's a lot of jokesters on Twitter. I'm very good friends with a lot of them. And I think they're always, pushing certain narratives, not necessarily to, get people to, buy a certain thing or to join a certain club, but mostly just to open people's minds. And I've never been a proponent of calling a fork or another coin Bitcoin until it has, number one, the hash power, and number two, the majority of exchange buy-in to give something the BTC ticker or the Bitcoin ticker.
Right.
So I don't think it makes sense for Bitcoin Cash and BSV to
call
try
themselves
to
Bitcoin.
Yeah, especially not early. I think it really takes away from their cause.
I would agree with that.
The coin thing is kind of a little bit clever, at least, where if someone sees just that, they'll stop and think, like, what is this person actually saying? It's not as misleading as just saying Bitcoin and really you're talking about Bitcoin Cash and you send someone a Bitcoin Cash address. You start to see enough of these posts and you're like, all right, why is it called Bitcoin with capital B, capital C?
Right.
It's because these people think that BSV is Satoshi's vision and is the original Bitcoin. They don't have the nerve to call it the Bitcoin, but they're trying to get you to open your mind about it a little bit.
Okay, so it might just be some internet slang. So it might just be some internet slang to get some people to think about the way that they define Bitcoin to themselves. What do you think about the idea that some people have? It's becoming more popular to define Bitcoin as the sum of all forks.
So,
I like that idea personally, and I think it makes a lot of sense when placing a true market value on Bitcoin rather than looking at just the price of Bitcoin, adding up, the price of all of them and having that be more of a market indicator of what this technology might be worth. What are your thoughts about that?
so working for the Navy, I work on some of the most complex projects in the world, including like integration to F-35s or integration into certain ships that are being competed against many different manufacturers.
Okay.
And all I can say is that with these incredibly complex projects, there are so many variables. And you don't know who's going to win a competition. They may have better manpower, might have a better budget. And I'm talking like Lockheed versus Raytheon versus EA.
Okay, like inter-industry competition.
Yeah, there are so many ways to solve problems. And if you need a new fighter jet, there should be 3 or 4 different techniques for developing that fighter jet. And some of them may be counterintuitive. So I really think Bitcoin is one of the most complicated projects that has ever existed. And we shouldn't get into these camps where we think we're right and we disavow any other fork that has a different scaling approach, because scaling Bitcoin is going to be one of the hardest projects in the next like 10 years. So, I can't see the future. So I hold all forks because I think I'm going to hedge my bets. And sure, I'll mess around with my weights a little bit if I think something is overvalued or if I think a certain chain is dying. Like I don't hold any Bitcoin Gold right now, which I guess isn't really even a fork because of the hashing algorithm. But I definitely reduced my BCH stance. But I still hold mostly Bitcoin and a good amount of BSV. But I think it's definitely smart to hold all forks, especially if you're kind of new to the space and you don't have your views like set in stone.
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. I would agree with a lot of that too. I don't see it as economically smart to, like you said, to not hedge your bets and to just pick one over the other and to feed into the competition, because I think it takes away more than it brings to the table as far as growing the industry and lowering the learning curve for more people and getting people on board and scaling and increasing demand.
Yeah, and people have a way of tricking themselves into supporting whatever position they've established. And it's kind of sunken cost fallacy, and it's a bunch of other, psychology going on. But if you sell all of your BCH or all of your BSV or all of your BTC, you might get more ingrained against it and really only support your own fork, and it leads to a closed-minded approach. So, put your money where your mouth is kind of thing. And you could certainly tinker a little bit, but not go overboard.
Well, right on. Another question I have here for you. Who do you think Satoshi Nakamoto is? Now, I know it's just guesswork, and I know there's a bunch of popular answers, but in your own words, in the words from Chris Mezzacappa, who do you think he is, or what? Was it a group, or what's going on here?
I think it was a team.
Okay.
And I think the team agreed to not ever come forward. And I think Craig may have been part of that team or was at least involved very early on, and now either wants to claim that he was the full team or he's just seen, something that he contributed to spin in a direction that he didn't like, and now he wants to, kind of take the reins again. However, I don't love Craig. I don't like Craig. I love Craig. I love everybody. But after reading that Satoshi affair, I think it was like a 2016 article maybe by, I think maybe the London Times or something. I'll link it. Awesome. There was a reporter embedded with Craig Wright for like weeks, and it's a very detailed interview, and there's some really good stuff in there. And Craig was kind of being pushed to come out as Satoshi by the company that bought his debt. There's many reasons why he may not have wanted to come out. Either he was still, a target by the government, or maybe he had financial reasons not to release it at that time. Ultimately, I don't think that he was Satoshi and that he couldn't prove it. But the main takeaway I get from this article is that he knows his stuff. He's really smart, and he's working on, some incredible things, but he's also a liar. It's just like ingrained in him, and he can't help himself from lying, and he keeps getting in his own way. And it's just crazy to think that someone so smart and so successful can still have such a huge hang up at that age. So I feel for him, and I think that people, you definitely shouldn't trash him overall just because he's got a couple of little problems, and you also shouldn't worship him because he has problems, just like anybody else.
Sure, definitely very human mistakes. I can't make up my mind for the life of me who I think it might be. Part of me wants to think it might not be anybody. It might just be a rogue AI or some kind of nefarious entity from who knows where.
Yeah, I've thought everything from, Hal Finney to,
sure,
an AI that somehow gets like launched on chain that spins around and time travels back to create itself. That's more ego-related stuff.
I guess to branch off of this question, what changes do you think would happen to the crypto space and to Bitcoin in general if Satoshi did come forward, whether it be one person or a group of people? Well, how do you think people would react to that? Do you think it would be back to just mobbing, like whether everyone thinks he is or isn't?
Yeah, so I think most of the camps are still pretty much set in stone, and that like 60% of the people wouldn't change. Like the Bitcoin core people are not going to change their philosophy, and the BSV people will just be a little more motivated. I think it would shift, a certain amount of people. The bigger deal would be what it means to the price. Because number one, Bitcoin is just so thinly traded. It's spread across multiple exchanges. It's fragmented. The order books are tiny compared to stocks. And it doesn't take much to, send the price up or to crash the price. And if someone got access to at least those 300,000 Bitcoin, let alone the 1.1 million that could be out there between Tulip Trust and everything else, you could do some serious market manipulation, at least hamper the price for a very long time.
Yeah, it could get crazy. I think some people would get really excited by that, but it scares me, obviously, when you talk about the thin order books and the ease of manipulation, the access that someone like Satoshi might have. But also, there's a large group of people that think Satoshi is the NSA or the CIA or some other intelligence group that's created this for their own purposes. And I think to negate that idea would also bring a lot of light to the culture, because I think some people are truthfully very scared to put their money where their mouth is, and in this super interesting this tech development, when we don't know who the creator is or where they came from or what their intentions were truly.
Yeah. So two main things I want to say. I may be a little blind to who is Satoshi, because I had this very romantic vision in my head of it being this very selfless person who locked away the coins, realized if they push this change into the world where people could all of a sudden control their money for once, the first time in history, that would be enough for that person. They wouldn't need, too much direction over where the coin goes, or they wouldn't, even need the wealth. They had a good life, and they made maybe one of the biggest changes in human history. So that's kind of like my romantic vision. I think holding Satoshi as this ideal is definitely stronger for Bitcoin in general. And I think a lot of people have made the point very, very well that if Satoshi came out in the first couple of years, it just wouldn't have worked. For some reason, people really just don't want to, a lot of people don't want to support projects created by somebody because the personality gets tied in with it, or they don't want to enrich the person. Plus all the, undue control that person could have over the currency. So I'd like to hold that romantic vision in my head for sure.
Yeah, I can totally understand that.
Forget what the other thing was, but it was good.
Yeah, no biggie. Well, let's jump topics a little bit. I just started a new book yesterday. I'm pretty excited about it. I've never read. It's technically a war novel, All Quiet on the Western Front.
Nice.
Never read anything like this before. It's all right. I'm a couple chapters in. I'm enjoying it.
World War II, right?
It's easy to read. World War I. Yeah. But I mean, technically, some people think it was the same war, so who knows, really. But have you finished any good books lately? Are you reading anything interesting right now? Anything you want to share?
I just finished Gödel, Escher, Bach by Hofstadter. That was like 700 some pages. It was super thick, super dense.
Wow.
It really gets into how consciousness and meaning can arise from formal systems, and specifically formal systems that were designed not to allow that to happen. For instance, like Principia Mathematica and very formal mathematical systems that were designed to prevent paradox can actually be spun around back on themselves, and Gödel proved this, and create paradox inside mathematics. And when I learned that for the first time through I Am a Strange Loop, which is also by Hofstadter, and probably I'd recommend it over GEB.
I Am a Strange Loop. I've heard that before. Yeah, I've got that written down.
Yeah, when I first read that, I'm not saying that made me see God, but it definitely made me see a lot of the flaws in like pure reasoning, and realize that paradox and non-duality is something that we have to live with. And it's just so deeply integrated into human life. That book took a lot out of me, though. It was, especially trying to read it with a couple of kids in the house. It was
right.
It was tough. It 100% brain power trying to figure it out.
I can only imagine.
Taking a break, going back to my roots a little bit, and I'm going to start reading more novels. I'm reading Clockwork Orange right now.
Oh, right. It's Anthony Burgess.
Yeah. I linked it on Twitter the other day. There was this guy, Doug Shaw. He just had like this crazy like 1990s like website where he started ranking there was the top 100 novels listed by Random House, I think, and he started reviewing them himself. And back in college, I read like maybe 15 books that he ranked as like 3 stars, and I loved like every single one of them. So I'm jumping back in and starting to read some of those before hopping back into the nonfiction again.
Oh, that's so awesome and inspiring.
I'm also reading Diamond Age, and I don't really like it. I don't love Neil Stephenson. I think like Silicon Valley and San Francisco are like obsessed with him, but I don't think he's a great writer. I don't think he's that clever, and he creates incredible worlds, but I just don't enjoy reading the books. Yeah. I'm still gonna slip through it because so many people worship Diamond Age and think it's like the best possible future, but
it's all right. We all read books we don't enjoy every once in a while. Mm-hmm. This year for me, I suppose that would be 1984, actually. I was just having this conversation yesterday. I'm a voracious reader. I've always heard so much about 1984. It's always felt like it'd be right up my alley, like I would enjoy it. But for some reason, I just kind of saved it for a rainy day. I've done that with a lot of classics, and I've just kind of stuck to whatever I was into at the time. And I had a couple rainy days this year. It's actually been one of the rainiest years I've ever been alive. So I pulled it out, flipped through it. It was a really good read. I loved the first half of it, but the ending absolutely just ripped me in half. Oh my gosh. The poor humanity. Yeah, the rat cage and him selling out his love, and it definitely spoke of the human condition for the time it was written in the gloominess I think that was felt after the war and preparing for what felt like was going to be another world war. But at the same time, it hurt my humanity now. Just God, I like a good ending, you know, like we all lived happily ever after. But you know, you need a little pain in the middle for that, a little suffering.
Yeah. Well, I definitely believe in like ontological design too, and like how what we create kind of spins around and creates us and motivates us. So I'm finding myself more and more lately like questioning when I'm reading something that's like very negative. And for instance, I'm also reading Conspiracy Against the Human Race right now by Thomas Ligotti. And it's a very pessimistic view. It's like pessimistic philosophy. He's a horror writer, supernatural writer, but this book is really his philosophy. And it's so negative, and it reminds me of so many thoughts that I've had in the past that I'm just like, do I really need to confront this like one-on-one again, or do I read something that's a little better?
Right.
The cool thing is so many good readers on Twitter, and even like a crypto book club. Crypto Randy Marsh started one, and
oh, no kidding.
The best recommendation of the year. I read The Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham, and I love it.
I'm writing it down now, and I will read that.
Yeah, and it's so nice, like having other people read and being able to talk to them about it, because it's very hard this day and age to there's so much content out there that even like TV shows and movies, like most of my friends are just watching whatever it is exactly that they want to watch, and none of them anymore. And it's like impossible to find people who are willing to invest the time into like reading the same thing as you. And I get so much pleasure from recommending a book and having people read it, and then them responding to me on how they liked it. It's just such a big time commitment, and it really means a lot.
That's fascinating. I would agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I'm surprised Crypto Randy Marsh has a book club, and I didn't know about it. I've been following him for some time. I think he's following me too. Maybe I haven't been on Twitter as much. I'm not sure, but boy, am I upset to hear this.
Yeah, it kind of fell off a couple months ago. It did start with a lot of like sci-fi stuff, and there was a very active group. I'm not sure if it's still going on.
That's awesome.
But Randy's a very bright guy and a very motivated, good guy.
Yeah.
Sometimes he knows stuff to get people stirred up, but I like him a lot. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's someone I would love to interview for this Building on Blockchain series, just to talk about these ideas and, I don't know, explain them in our own terms, you know?
Sure.
Defining things ourselves is such a beautiful process to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that you're doing this, because if somebody watches a few videos like this, it means so much more than the dialogue that you see on Twitter and just the one-sidedness of everything. And I want to see more of the Twitter personalities really show who they are and admit that, you know, they're wrong sometimes, and also show what they really believe in, because we really shouldn't be this divided. It doesn't make any sense. We're all not only on Twitter and spending so much time there, but we're in crypto Twitter.
I know.
Not wrong. Like what a bunch of weirdos to be in this like really small corner of the world and to be bickering all the time.
Yeah, it's funny how we have segregated ourselves in a way. We're kind of getting in our own way, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. This is something I definitely want to keep working at. I think building on blockchain is a good way to lower the learning curve for everyday people who might not have a whole lot of time to stay with crypto Twitter or to follow the Bitcoin price or this or that. And I want to avoid a lot of the price talk and a lot of the analysis, the technical analysis. I kind of just want to focus on the fundamental analysis and the developments, and the culture and the language is what's super important to me. I find it fascinating how quickly things are changing.
Yeah, man, what you're doing is super important, and just keep talking to people. It's just going to make this place better.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier ontological design, the idea that the things that we create will turn around and create us back. I am a huge believer in this as well. I'm really happy that you mentioned that. And I think about the implications of this tech, like blockchain and crypto, and how the ecosystem is changing so fast and so quickly, and how this will in turn shape us 10, 15 years down the road from now. And to combine this with an earlier point, you mentioned like what is money, and asking yourself these fundamental questions. And that's something I've done a lot since I've gotten involved with crypto and blockchain. But more importantly, I've asked myself, what do I want from money? Like, what do I want my money to do for me? And those are like past defining it, but figuring out like what is its purpose and what do you want its purpose to do? And this is something that's changing day to day now as we're watching it on crypto Twitter and on just other websites and YouTube. And how do you think this kind of industry and the changes in the ecosystem might change ourselves in the future?
So one of the biggest and most important things to me is that I can hold my private key either in a vault or in my head, and nobody can take that from me. Nobody can freeze my account, stop my transactions. And being a federal employee, my salary is dependent on the U.S. government. My house is in New Jersey, you know, in a single location, single asset. And then my whole retirement, whether it be Social Security or my 401k, which is called the TSP with the government, or my annuity, all this relies on the U.S. government being there and being able to pay its bills. So for me in particular, it makes a lot of sense to have something that may be a hedge to the USD one day, or at least can't be taken from me and can't be, diluted. And I think pension plans in both states and federally will start to be taken from. I mean, the federal government does borrow from the G fund, which is like government securities. Right. It's paid back, but everyone eventually runs into problems paying their bills, and unfortunately, it hits the pensions and stuff. So that's one thing. And a lot of people take that and a lot of other talking points in crypto and think that we're building this like trustless society, but it's completely untrue. No matter what you're doing, even if you're running a full node, you're trusting somebody. You still need miners to include your transactions. And yes, you could economically incentivize them and everything, but nothing is ever purely trustless. And I think DeSantis and a lot of people in the DOS community were really pushing like, hey, we're going to make some of these financial tools better. We're going to make money better, but this is really about web of trust and about building a reputation with each other. And I think that's very important in a day where, people are losing their reputations overnight because of either accusations or, a comment they made like 30 years ago. So
Right.
I think we're actually coming back and emphasizing trust a little more in some ways. And at least that's what I'm trying to do.
Right. And along with that, transparency. That's something that's going to seriously put the rock behind trust on the World Wide Web, and, using third-party applications and open source code where you can go ahead and check yourself. I think transparency is going to be getting bigger and bigger because of that. There's some major advantages for businesses especially, but also people that want to clear their name or that want a public record for, to show for tax reasons or personal reasons, political reasons.
There's so many little things that I tend to gloss over now just because I'm so deep in different rabbit holes. Even something just as simple as when people found out Andreas Antonopoulos actually wasn't rich, and everyone came together and they sent him $800K or something at the time. And it's just so cool knowing that.
Wow.
I guess there's always a chance of sibling someone's address, but he posted his address, and then you could check on the blockchain what money's going to him, making sure that it arrived at the destination. And I think that could work very well hand in hand with companies like Give Directly, and other charitable funds to at least and this can also build into things like proof of commitment, or I can't find the right word right now, but even just having a message board system or a chat system where you can prove cryptographically that you own a certain amount of a coin. That could be a requirement to actually have discussions, and that could lead to a dystopian view of you need money for your voice to be heard. But when we're just talking about eliminating trolls, when people want to talk about, say, Twitch, and have some influence on where it goes from now, you could easily set up a hookup so that someone could check your balance and make sure you at least have some skin in the game before listening to you or taking your thoughts seriously.
That's really interesting. I think that'd be a very positive thing for the ecosystem that crypto and blockchain is becoming, but also outside of that, and how that will affect the other corners of our life that are interconnected with our money.
Yeah.
I think that'll be generally a very positive thing for society, and hopefully it will lead to some sort of paradigm shift where we can question, how and why we define things the way we do, and maybe the people can find some clarity along the way, and maybe that'll bring us a little peace of mind.
Yeah, and one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is crypto and all these other payment methods, even just PayPal and Venmo and stuff, they allow you to settle your debts instantly, which is good and bad. Whenever I go on a ski trip with my brother-in-law, who's a little older than me, he's 40 now, I always just find it weird, whenever we go out to eat or when we go pick up beer or something, whether it makes sense or not, he always offers to pay, and then I'll offer to pay the next time. And it kind of creates this running balance sheet between each other. You're not taking strict notice of it, but you kind of know that you owe somebody something and that you want to. So there's various societies around the world who actually would loan out a pound of sugar to their neighbor or something. And then the neighbor would return a pound and a half of sugar. And what that does is it establishes not necessarily a debt, but it kind of forces an ongoing relationship of always thinking oh, this person helped me out and I owe them something back and I want to keep this going. Whereas, financial products these days allow you to have that clean cut all the time. So I definitely noticed a lot of younger people, they definitely want that clean cut, and me in particular too. I also hate owing people money. I don't really care if people owe me money that much, but I really hate owing people money. But I think just the idea of trust and using cold calculation and trust settlement through some of these products is just an interesting thing to be studied.
Yeah, I think so too. What a time to be alive, huh? Right in front of it all. It's awesome.
You really got to step back and realize there's a lot of crazy stuff going on right now.
Yeah, when taking away all the personal bias and my singular perspective, looking at things objectively, it really is just, it truly is something amazing.
Yeah, man.
Well, heck, I think we've been on here for quite a good amount of time. Any other thoughts, or would you want to plug Bitconsult and anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, check out my website, Bitconsult. Send me some feedback if you want to. I haven't updated it in a year. But check out my Twitter at Chris Mez with 3 Z's, CHRISMEZZZ.
Chris Mez.
I don't know. I don't really want anything. I'm just here to like talk to people and meet people, and definitely reach out and just talk to me. I just want to meet more people and help educate, and also I'm constantly evolving. Send me your views, and I'm just happy to be here. I love you all, and this has been a fun ride.
Love you too, Chris. You
Thanks,
share an interesting perspective, and that's one of the things building on blockchain is all about, is focusing on these different perspectives and how each one is a part to the whole. And we can compartmentalize and we can look at things in fractions and, just this one person or just that group of people, but really it's each one of these different perspectives, even the ones we don't like, that make this whole damned thing so beautiful.
Yeah.
So talking to people like you,
great work.
It's a pleasure.
I'm very excited to see what you do in the future.
Thank you very much. I hope this helps definitely the people that are watching it and might not have any idea what's going on, or they think they know, or they're figuring it out, or whatever your case may be. I hope this helps.
Yeah, man. All right, let's keep it going.
All right. Till next time, Chris. Thank you very much.
You're right.
All right. Bye.